Hey everyone, Dave Newman here from Stately Play. We're coming to you with another walkthrough video for another board game. Yeah, that hasn't gone so well for us in the past. If you're wondering about our Liberty or Death series that I had started, yes, I do plan on coming back to it at some point. We had a little bit of a disaster around the holidays where my game area was kind of destroyed and Liberty or Death got put back in the box, and getting it out and getting everything back up and running has been a challenge, but I do plan on getting that done and finishing those videos. Plus, I'm trying a new way of filming things, so we'll see how this goes. Give me feedback if you like this version better than the camera flying all over. Anyway, today we're looking at something from Victory Point Games. It's a old game of theirs, I guess, but this is the new second edition that was just released. The first edition came out a while ago and had a ton of expansions, and this new one kind of brings everything together into one box, and it's beautiful. You can see the board and everything here, and it just comes with some beautiful cards. Everything's got a linen finish, and Victory Point Games is really outdoing themselves with some of their later games like Nemo's War, Dawn of the Zeds 3rd edition, this game. I just got Chariots of Rome as well, which has some really nice component quality. So yeah, Victory Point Games is really making a name for themselves here. From I used to think of them as kind of the small company with kind of crummy components and kind of niched games, but they're moving into stuff that's actually pretty darn cool. So yeah, so let's look at this. But Darkest Night it's basically the big bad evil necromancer. It has taken over the world, and everything's bad and miserable, and you will play 4 heroes trying to take him out. It is not a it's an adventure game. I'd say similar to something like Runebound or Talisman. However, you can see the board only has 7 spaces. So it's not a huge area, so you're not like traveling all over this map. So it's a little more strategic, where you have to figure out how to maneuver and get around. And the 7 spaces, 6 of them are corrupted with these blights that the necromancer keeps putting out. The zombies here. There's a ton of different kind of blights you can put out on the board, and I'll show you how those get put out eventually. The cool thing about this game is, if you look at this, there's 29 classes you can play, and all of them are pretty different. This is my 3rd playthrough now, and I've used 4 different heroes for each playthrough, and all of them feel different, and so far all of them have been fun, and I haven't found one that I've been totally like ugh. You see each character here has their own sets of powers. You start with 3 for each character. Here's with the bards, Trickery, Finesse, and Rousing Melody. But they also all come with a deck of cards for themselves. So each one of the 29 characters has their own deck of cards of new powers that you'll be able to draw from as the game continues. Each character has their own sheet like this with their stats and standees. They're also, I got miniatures for my game, but I actually prefer the standees. And the 4 characters we will be playing today are the Paragon, the Wayfarer, Prince, and the last one is the Bard. So I just drew these randomly. You always play with 4 characters every time you play, even if you're playing solo. But it's still a great solo game. I've only played it solo because I have no friends. And so basically the heroes will go, and each hero, you can pick which heroes you want to go in what order, but we'll just go in kind of a steady order until we see a reason not to. And there's these 4 stages of every turn: a start, the event, your action, and then the end phase. And then after all the heroes go, the necromancer will go. And he has some stages too, that just some steps you walk through. It's a pretty easy game. It's simple to learn, but there's a ton of depth here. And the heroes will lose if 4 blights show up in the monastery at any point. Heroes can die along the way. And the heroes win if they kill this guy, if they can kill the necromancer and take him out, which is not easy. I've not done it yet, so I've lost my other 2 games. This is the third. We'll see how we do. But I've already set up the board with everything. You start the game with a blight in every area. That's the necromancer is controls all these. So there's a blight in every area, and you do that by drawing map cards, which look like this, and then you would just take the individual thing you need and drop it in each space. So for example, here's the zombies in the forest, but each map card has a color at the bottom, so you can put the map cards into different groups if you want. The rule book has a whole bunch of different subdecks that you can make with different themes, and just to make each game kind of feel a little different, to give each game you play a little different flavor. So I'm playing the green one right now, which is what they recommend for newbies, and I still haven't done it here, the simplicity version. So that's the only blights that will be coming out here, based on the map cards I picked. And of course, if you get really good and want to get crazy, you can just throw all the map cards in the deck and just play with everything, and you'd have to be prepared for every single thing to pop up, which, I'm definitely not there. So now that the blights are all out here, you see the board. The necromancer begins his game in the ruins. Yep, there he is. I'm going to use a mini for the necro while I'm using standees for the heroes, just because it makes it easier for me to just tell them apart at a glance. I have minis for the heroes as well, but the standees are quite beautiful, I think, and I kind of like them. So I'm going to stick with the standees for now. Maybe I'll show you some of the minis later in a later video or something, but for now we're going to use these guys, so get used to seeing them, and hopefully we can move on here and actually take out the necromancer. So we start with all 4 heroes in the monastery, and at the beginning of turn 1 we can pick however we want to go, but we're just going to go how I have them down on the table. So our first guy here is going to be the Paragon. Here you see the different stages of the hero's turn, and so we'll start with the Paragon, as I said, and the first step of his turn is going to be if anything happens at the start of your turn, we're in the monastery, so there's nothing here for us to do. Here's the Paragon's powers. He has a rebuke, an aura of fortitude, and steadfastness, which I will get into all those as we start to play them. I don't want to sit here and kind of do a full just rules video, because those I find them rather boring, so I'd rather just kind of play the game and then explain what's happening as we play. If you guys think that sucks, please tell me and I will rethink how I do these. But anyway, the Paragon's going to go at the start of his turn, nothing happens. And for the event there, you skip it if you're in the monastery, which we are. So for his action, he's going to travel, he moves a space. So you can move to any adjacent space, and then his secrecy goes up by 1. In this game, your heroes only have 2 stats, Grace, which is highlighted here, and that's kind of like your hit points. It's a little different than hit points, but basically the same. The lore here is that your heroes are so cool that they can die, but then they have grace, which brings them back to life. So you can get to 0 grace and still keep adventuring, but once you die with 0 grace, then you're done because you can't come back. But for our sake of things and just from role playing for 30 years, I'm gonna stick with basically their hit points, and I might end up calling them that during the video. So if I do, feel free to flog me. The other stat that the heroes have is called Secrecy, and that's on the track right below the Grace. Secrecy is basically how if the necromancer is aware of you, and so he's not aware of the heroes out there trying to stop him, but every time you do something, you can like fight a blight, or if you're in his area, he starts to kind of sniff you out a little bit. So your secrecy will go down, but when you move, you throw him off a little bit. So when you move, you get to bump your secrecy up by 1. So the Paragon just traveled over to the forest there, where you see he's got some zombies. There's another token in there. We'll explain what that is later. We're not going to deal with it for a while, but there his secrecy pops up to 5. And that was his action. So now if there's a blight in his location, he has to resolve it. And this blight, a zombie, does. Basically, it spits out a zombie at the end of, if there's a hero, at the end of his turn, a zombie will come out and fight him. And you see its stats at the top there. Its might is 5. Its might is 5, and its awareness is 3. So if you want to fight it, you have to roll at least a 5 for success. And if you want to evade it or elude it, you need to roll at least a 3. The other might and defense is if you're actually battling the blight to get rid of it from the board. Think of it kind of as a monster generator. The blight here is like the old bones and bone piles and gauntlet, where they just keep spitting out monsters. So we need to just fight this guy here, the 5 and 3, at the end of the turn. So rebuke, he's going to use rebuke. You get to use 1 tactic per turn, so he's going to use his rebuke tactic, which lets him fight with 2 dice. He doesn't have an active aura right now, so that part doesn't matter. But normally you'd only get to roll 1. That's a standard roll, is you get to roll 1 dice and check for success. But he rolls 2 for rebuke, and he rolls 2 5s, which he needed a 5 to beat the zombie's might, the shield icon there. So he rolled 2 successes. He only needed 1 to win, and that's it. If he would have not done that, he would have taken, he would have died. That's what the crossbones mean, and that would have had to lose a grace. Now I see I should have used steadfastness here and rolled an extra dice as a bonus to defend against blights. It should have given me an extra die. So I should have rolled 3 dice, but I won anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I'll try to not miss these things. There's a lot of stuff on the table here. So the Wayfarer is going to travel as well. He's going to go over to the village, and again, he gets to bump up his secrecy, but he does not, because you only get to move it up to 5 when you travel. And as luck would have it, the Wayfarer, his secrecy is already at 5. So oh well. He doesn't get anything special there, but his powers are kind of about traveling and hiding. So he has one called here from the blue, which is a bonus when he gets to activate after traveling. So considering that that's the action he just took to travel, we're going to put an activate token on this to show that it's active, and then we can deactivate it on a later turn to fight, and we can roll extra dice. So at the end of his turn, if there's a blight in his location, he has to fight it, and then there's another zombie token there in the village. So again, the 5 and 3 stats for the zombie, but he's going to use In the Wind for his tactic, which helps him to elude. So he gets to roll 3 dice, and he only has to roll higher than a 3 to evade this zombie, which isn't a bad deal. So he rolls 3 dice, and he manages to sneak through and get into the village without the zombie seeing him by rolling a 1-1 and that 6. The 6 saved him. So the Wayfarer is having a good day so far. The Prince, however, is, again, there's no event phase because he's in the monastery, and he's also going to travel. So his secrecy does go up by 1 to 4, and he's going to go to the mountains where there's some shades in there, and you see their stats are a little different, so they're easier to fight than they are to evade. So he's going to use his strategy tactic, and the Prince is going to be able to fight then the shade with 2 dice, and he needs a 3 to beat that shade. Otherwise he will take a grace here, but he rolls a 3 and a 4, so he actually succeeded with both dice, and his turn is ended. For the Bard, again, he's in the monastery, so we don't do an event. And his action is going to be like everyone else, to get out of the monastery and start trekking around town. And he's going to follow the prince up to the mountains. So his secrecy will go up to 5. And then he also has to take on these shades at the end of his turn. And his tactic that he can use, you're allowed 1 tactic for fighting. He's going to do trickery, which lets him roll 3 dice, but he has to subtract 1 from the highest die. So he rolls 3 dice, and he rolls a 2, 3, and a 6, but we have to subtract 1 from that highest one, so it ends up with a 2, 3, 5, which is enough to fight this guy. He only needed a 3, and that's it. So that's the first turn for the heroes, and now the Necromancer gets to do what he does. And the first thing he does on every turn is he's going to increase the darkness by 1. Now the darkness is a track on the board, it's kind of a timer. It's 30 spaces long, so it takes a while. So he bumps that up by 1 every single turn, and when it hits certain milestones on there, bad things happen. So the next thing he does is he's going to move, and you see there's dice markings on the board. So all we do is we roll a die and compare it to these things, and then we move the Necromancer in that direction. If we roll a movement die that's higher than any of the hero's secrecy levels, he will move towards those heroes instead. But that's not the case here. So instead he just moves to the village, and then the thing he does is he drops whatever blight we pull on the next map card, which in this case is a Shades. So now you see that the Necromancer's in the village with the Wayfarer, along with some zombies and Shades. And this is going to affect the Wayfarer's secrecy next turn. Because if you start your turn where the Necromancer is, you will lose secrecy. So that's the end of turn 1. So where are we? The Paragon has moved to the forest. He's battled a few zombies. The Prince and Bard have headed to the mountains together, and they both battled some Shades without any difficulty. And our Wayfarer snuck into the village past some zombies, but unfortunately the Necromancer's in there with him, and drops some more monsters on him, and he's standing outside sniffing around. So we'll see what happens in turn 2, and hopefully turn 2 will be a lot quicker. We won't have to do the whole intro stuff. And thank you for watching, and we will get turn 2 up as soon as we can. Please head to Stately Play and read a whole bunch of great articles by a bunch of good writers, and me, which, you know, the bad articles are mine and the other writers are great. And we write about things like board games and video games, and especially where the two of those overlap. Board game apps are one of the things we cover quite a bit. We hope to see you there. You can hang out in our forums. We have a lot of tournaments and stuff going on in there, a whole bunch of stuff to go along with all the news and reviews and other stuff that we do at Stately Play. So if you haven't been there, check it out. And we hope to see you again soon, as we get up turn number 2. Bye, everyone.